Okay, great. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our very first one-of-a-kind situation. Welcome to our information session on H-1B visas. This will be the first time ever that UP is doing this, so hopefully it will be a great success. I will start by introducing myself. My name is Savani Praki. I will be your MC tonight. I'm in my last term of my MBA. With a concentration in operations technology and management. My undergrad was in biology. I studied at PSU. Yeah, I would also like to mention that this session is very close to my heart because I wouldn't have ended up here if my dad didn't have an H-1B visa and get us all to the US. So this is something that's very near and dear to my heart. Introducing our team, we have Trevor, Chris, and Brandon, who also helped work on this project. So I will hand off to Trevor to introduce himself.
Hi, my name is Trevor. I am going to be graduating from University of Portland's MBA program this coming June. I studied at Concordia University and I got my undergraduate in business administration. And I'm really excited to present to you guys about H-1B. And I'll pass it off to Chris.
Hello, it's nice to meet everyone. My name is Chris Reeves. I went to the University of Portland for my undergrad as well as my MBA. I'll be graduating this June with a concentration in finance.
Hi, everybody. My name is Brandon Chi. I will be finishing the MBA program here in May. And I did my undergrad at the University of New Mexico, and I also have a concentration in marketing. So thank you very much. Nice to meet everybody.
And that's our team, and we worked very hard to put this together, so we really hope you guys enjoy it. All right, first of all, I would like special thanks. I would like to thank some of the people that helped us come up with this project. First, I would really like to thank Melissa and Lilia and Rebecca, who help run the School of Business, and they put this idea together and helped us pursue it. So thank you so much for the wonderful opportunity. We really appreciate it. All right, so a summary for tonight. I will go ahead and introduce some basic information about the H-1B visas. A lot of people already know what they need to know, but just in case someone doesn't, I would like to go over some basic preliminary information. We will have a panel discussion. We have 3 amazing panelists here to help keep giving us information. They are also amazing contacts, so I hope that you guys enjoy their portion of this as well. And then we'll have wrap up and questions. This will include questions to us, our team, or any random questions that we have to the panelists, things that maybe the panelists want to ask each other, anything basically. And I'll also be sharing their contact info at the very end. So if that's something that you guys are interested in, look forward to that. So an introduction to H-1B. So H-1B is an American visa. This visa allows American companies to hire like foreign professionals for specialty occupations. The process is a 3-step process. I would say straightforward, but it's really not. The first part of the process is that the employer fills out a labor condition application, an LCA, with the United States Department of Labor, which outlines things like wages and working conditions that these foreign professionals will be hired to work in. Then after the LCA is approved, the employer will fill out an I-129, which petitions an H-1B status for the professional that is going to be working here. And then after that, the employee now has an H-1B status and they have a visa. So hopefully Gretel can help us talk about this a little bit more. And that leads us into our speakers. So now I would like to take great pleasure in introducing our speakers. We have Gretel Ness, who is an immigrations attorney who focuses her practice on employment immigration, including temporary work visas and skilled worker visas. We also have our very own Professor Meckler. He is a professor of management at the University of Portland's Kaplan School of Business. And we also have Aditi Chauhan, who is a UP alum, and she works with Daimler Trucks North America as a software engineer with compliance regulatory affairs. So Gretel, if you could please introduce yourself to us and give us a quick pronunciation of your name, please.
Hi, first of all, thanks for the invitation to present to this panel. Like Shivani said, I am an immigration attorney and my practice focuses on business immigration. I represent a lot of employers and employees, and typically I work with HR or the in-house legal counsel as far as sorting out their immigration issues and wanting to bring in foreign workers like yesterday. And you know, what else? Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to be here and hopefully I could help shed some light on you know, and strategy options in terms of you know, how to entice an employer to sponsor you. And not just, I mean, it's probably outside the scope of this 1 hour session on H-1Bs, but really part of the strategy here is not just on H-1B and focusing on getting the H-1B status, but also thinking outside the box and looking long-term, because at the end of the day, if your end goal is being able to stay permanently in the US and get green card status, you know, it's never too early to start looking at that in relation to when you start approaching an employer for that H-1B status. So.
Right. Thank you so much, Gretel. And a very quick pronunciation of your name for everyone at home.
It's just Gretel, Ness.
Perfect.
Easy.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, next, Dr. Meckler, would you like to introduce yourself and give a pronunciation of your name?
Certainly. My name is Mark Meckler, and I'm a he, him, and I'm a professor at the University of Portland in the management department. And I teach cross-cultural management and leadership and strategy.
Thank you. Dr. Meckler is one of my favorite professors, so I'm very glad that he decided to join us today. And last but not least, Aditi, would you like to introduce yourself and give us a quick pronunciation of your name?
Yes. Before going there, I want to say, Professor Mark, you are my favorite too. I remember taking capstone class with you. It was so fun.
I remember.
I thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay, so my name is Aditi Chauhan, and again, I did my master's in operations and technology management, like most of you who are here. And I started my journey at Daimler as an intern. And now I'm a full-time employee. And right now I'm working in compliance and regulatory affairs department. And we can talk more about my journey and H-1B later in the session. I don't want to steal the show from Shivani right now.
Oh, thank you. Actually,
Yeah.
we're going to be jumping into our questions right now. So let's start with some of the questions that we have for Gretel. Brandon, would you like to start?
Yeah. So Gretel, I had one question here. What are the most common mistakes you see from applicants looking to get a H-1B visa, and how could they avoid those pitfalls?
Okay, so well, I think first and foremost, you have to understand when you're looking for H-1B status, it's really a process that's mostly employer driven. So there's only so much that foreign national employee or candidate can control when it comes to the H-1B process. But that said, I think when you're looking for H-1B sponsorship, it's always a good idea to do your homework and learn as much as you can about the process so that you can sell it to your employer, because you can't assume that the employer knows anything about, especially if it's a smaller employer, you can't assume that they know anything about the process. And if they think they do, most of the time they have a misconception about it. So right off the bat, because of those misconceptions, they might be not necessarily inclined to agree to sponsor you. I mean, because you're making it, most of you guys are in the STEM field, so most of you would already have the OPT work authorization, so you're making it easy for them already, because they've already kind of tested you, and they've gotten, especially now that it's up to a 3-year OPT status, they've gotten a chance to test you and see how you are, and already decide that they want to keep you. So from your end, the selling point here is that you have to tell them, ideally from when you first got your first OPT period, to give it a shot already and try for that H-1B, because it is a lottery. So at least if you don't wait until towards the end of your OPT time before you approach your employer. Try to see if they could already have you going for the lottery, so that you at least get like 3 chances at the lottery, if at all possible.
Gotcha. Thank you very much.
So
Dr. Meckler, the next question is going to be for you, and this is just in your experience, or maybe opinion, what you've seen. What are some of the benefits that a corporation has when hiring foreign students, and then what would some challenges be for an international student coming and being hired in an American company?
Ooh, well, right now things have changed pretty quickly over the last few years. And we have a different political regime in the US. That's a big deal. And there's also just a huge sociocultural move for diversity in general. And so it's on everybody's mind. It's a really good thing for international students, because a lot of firms are, instead of just talking about it, they're realizing, all right, they're so stodgy sometimes, and they don't move until they have to, and then they finally realize that it's a good thing. So I think firms are realizing that creating more diversity is not only necessary, but it's a good thing, and they're probably feeling more free to hire international students if they can get through the lottery. Second, you still have the visa constraint, and you still have that problem, but we have a different political regime, and I don't know if they've changed or loosened anything. Gretel would know better, but at least they haven't tightened anything. And there's also a different, it's kind of a different climate in the country in terms of employers maybe being a little less fearful or a little more likely to reach out and hire you. So for companies, they know the benefit. One of them is kind of a little odd. It doesn't sound great, but it's almost like in sports, when you draft that quarterback in the first round and you get this great person for the first few years of their career at a really low price. They know that you're going to work extra hard because you've got to prove yourself. And so they get you. So, Shivani and whoever gets you, it's going to be, well, you're not international, but you know what I mean. Any of us, whoever gets any of our MBAs, especially, they're really going to be well off. And so that's an advantage I think they know they have it if they can get you through the current process. I still think that the problem is something you can kind of, you have to express that you've got, usually, is there a visa where it's, if you have a specialty, is that different than the normal one, Gretel?
Well, it's supposed to be a specialty occupation. It's just a term of art for the H-1B, but it just means that it has to be a professional position, requiring the minimum of 4-year bachelor's degree.
Okay, yeah, I know there are some where if it's a tight labor market for a certain specialty, that they'll ease up for international hires. And if you can communicate that you've got a specialty, then that really helps.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes, there might be, for new grads, it's harder to do the O1 for extraordinary ability, for example, or worst case scenario, you could try to see if they really want you, since you've been there for 3 years already in OPT status. Maybe some of them, and you can't, or sometimes you repeatedly try to get picked in the lottery and you don't get picked. Sometimes what we do is if you really have an employer that's on board, by the second time, if it's not successful, we see if they could start the green card sponsorship process already. I mean, that's kind of thinking outside the box. I mean, it helps those people more that's maybe not necessarily from India or China, where there's a long immigrant visa backlog. You know, you can't get far enough in the process to get the work permit or the green card. But for other nationalities, it's an option to just start the green card sponsorship process outright. You know, so.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I was going to point out that there are a couple of countries that have a really long backlog, and that's that remains a big barrier.
Thank you. All right,
Alright.
Trevor, would you like to ask the next question?
Yeah, so Didi, this question's for you. What was the application process like for you and how long did it take?
Okay, sorry, I was trying to unmute myself. So the application process for H1B, it was smooth for me, to be very honest. The reason was I did my back work. So when I was applying for jobs, I was, trying to reach out to employees and the managers that do they file H1B and what kind of, opportunities I will have there. And second, what kind of degree I have. So I think those steps really helped me to go through the H1B process. And for me, approach was kind of, I was not applying for one company or one job. I was, reaching out to multiple people, multiple companies, different industry where my degree matches, my interest matches. So that really helped me.
For sure. Thank you. All right, back to Brandon.
All right, Gretel, I have another one for you. So you kind of touched on it earlier or previously, like with some helpful tips and tricks. Is there anything an applicant can do maybe to their resume, structure their resume, or gain some other experience while they're putting in an application or trying to win the lottery for it?
I think from an employee's perspective, one thing that you could already kind of do is you already have an idea of what the position is that you're looking for, and so you would know kind of what the occupational classification it would be, especially if it's in your STEM field. You kind of have an idea already, so it wouldn't hurt to kind of do a run to see where your salary would likely fall under, because from my end, a key holdup that most employers have is part of the LCA process. When you file it, you have to meet the prevailing wage, and it's always an issue when the prevailing wage that supposedly has to be paid for the position is significantly higher than what the employer actually is willing to pay you. So then there has to be some creativity there, as far as, because that would be part of the process of selling yourself. And even after you've sold yourself and the employer, especially smaller employers, and the employer has said, okay, we want to bring you on board, as a software engineer, for example, but then it's a small firm and they have their own set criteria on what a new grad would be making with them. But then the prevailing wage comes up as significantly higher than what they're willing to pay. So in that type of scenario, you kind of have to say, okay, if they're not willing to commit to an annual salary of this much, maybe would they be willing to have you work 30 hours at the hourly prevailing wage, so that at least so long as they, because the way it works is so long as they're meeting that prevailing wage, it could be hourly or it could be that annual rate. So if it's too prohibitively high for the annual rate, maybe they would be willing to work with you so that you're paid at an hourly rate within the prevailing wage. So that's one way of kind of thinking outside the box and selling yourself and negotiating that way. And what Aditi said before too, I mean, she applied to many places, so that you kind of, I mean, because as far as the H1B lottery goes, I mean, so long as it's not multiple applications by the same employer for you, you're not automatically disqualified. So if you could have a number of different employers trying to file for you, seeing, and you join whichever one ends up, but that also has to be negotiated, because obviously, I mean, the employers have to know that if they're hiring a foreign national, of course you want to have the H-1B status. And so you might want to incorporate that in your negotiations with them, because it's I mean, it's just reality, that's just how it is when you're bringing in a foreign national employee. So
Thank you for that.
Thank you. All right, Chris, you're up.
Dr. Meckler, you touched on this a little bit when speaking about the political climate, but are there any trends in management strategy or increased hiring when it comes to foreign students?
I saw that question, and special. Yeah, I think so. I think that, and this is just trends in cross-cultural management strategy that you think is changed. I kind of laughed at the language in there. You threw in socially constructed truths. That was really nice.
Yeah, our company is just following kind of the political climate of the times, or were they already trending to hiring more international students? And
no, it's other things that you might not. It's actually more detailed things that but have significantly changed. So, like, let's use that language of what the social facts that have changed. So, what counts as professional, right? We had what was professional before. Now, socially, that's changing. What counts as professional? That's expanding now to accommodate multiple cultures, and that's been a tough one to move. But there's a big push for that, and people are getting retrained in corporations, like they're literally going through sensitivity training, so that they have a more expanded view of what counts as professional, and that's good for international students because it's a much larger accommodation for what they're, what somebody comes in, what they're expecting to see is the same old Swiss person, the Northern European definition of professionalism that's we've maintained in the US for so long. That's really expanding, and that's a big trend. Another one is the idea of fit. That's changing a lot. So in a lot of hiring beforehand, a big thing is like, does this person fit? And it turns out, does this person fit is a good recipe for zero diversity or very low diversity. It has disparate impact, let's call it that. It's not quite that law. You wouldn't use the 4/5 law, but anyway, and that's changing. So now it's people getting retrained to think, will people fit with our mission, and do they fit with the skills that we need done? And they're actually being told not to say, do they fit with our group? Because then it just ends up, are they like us? And so that's a nice change also. That's going to skew things more toward international students and people who aren't just the same old gang joining. And then what hasn't changed, but is more on it's more on people's minds and HR strategy is what we're looking for is still, you have this work to do, or they have some work that needs to be done, and you have to say, I can do that work. That hasn't changed. And if you can say, I know the work you have done, or I can do that, and I can do this work, and here's what I want to learn. And since working with you, it's perfect for me because I'll be able to learn what I want to learn. I can do the work you want. You have to show them that you can get work done without a lot of supervision, and that they can trust that if somebody's not supervising you, you're still going to get your work done. And even the trust goes even farther if it's like, and I can give you keys to the building and when I'm away and things are fine. So that is like, for a supervisor, that's the dream employee. Gets the work done. I can trust that you get the work done even when I'm not watching you. And even when there's some barriers in the way, you're going to figure out how to get the work done. And even if I'm not even there, it's going to get done. And if you can convince somebody of that, then yeah, it's a home run. So that stayed the same. And I although I think that there's more HR managers are saying that are saying that specifically that they're looking for those skills, can overcome barriers on their own and figure out how to get things done, kind of thing.
Great, thank you.
That's really good insight. All right, Trevor, you're up.
Yeah, another question for you, Aditi. Was there anything you did or wish you did before applying to your H-1B that made or would have made the process easier for you?
So again, honestly, I was working really hard to, even when I started my degree, I enrolled for it. I started reading and, learning more about H-1B, the process, what employers are looking at, how can I make myself or my resume fit into their, what are the hot jobs or the hot technology things which I'm interested in, I can do. So I think that's really helped me. Like my, the legwork I worked, it really helped me. So I don't think I could have done anything different than what I did.
Okay, that's awesome. All right, Brandon, you got another question?
Yes, the last one for you, Gretel. So with all this information, this might be a different question than what I sent to you, but what are some issues that you see students running into with maybe some industries or corporations, and how can they avoid it or be on the lookout for any potential issues down the road?
That's like such an open-ended question. I mean,
I
know, I'm sorry.
I think, okay, so one thing I was gonna tell, I wanted to make sure to tell you guys is that, I mean, it's always a good idea to always keep in touch with your professors in college or in grad school, only because sometimes when we get far enough in the process, you already have H-1B status and say we're starting the green card process, unless you end up getting green card status outside of your employer, like say if you ended up marrying a US citizen or something, that's different. But if you're going to get sponsored by an employer, especially when you're a new grad that just joined that employer that ends up being the same employer sponsoring you for the green card, we can't count experience that you gained from that employer. So because of that, you're sometimes what we have to do from an immigration standpoint is we have to count knowledge gained from education. And it's always a good, so the only way to get that confirmation is it's not going to be a job confirmation from another employer. It's going to have to be going back to your old professor and trying to say, can I get a letter from you that specifies that for this particular program, I learned blah, blah, blah skills. Or maybe if you were a teaching assistant or a grad assistant for that professor, so that's one like tidbit thing to keep in mind. That's just outside the box, and then aside from that, as far as the H-1B goes, I think you guys have to follow what Aditi was saying. It's like, do your homework and just be prepared, and don't be afraid to negotiate, because a lot of employers and a lot of HR people now are looking more and more, especially in this market, to foreign grads, to foreign nationals, to bring in and do the work for them, because they know that you could do the work. I mean, the hard part here is just that lottery, because sometimes that's the disincentive, because I know we have some clients where they don't even want to look at foreign at students, because especially if they're not in the STEM field and they're not going to have the 3-year OPT status, and it's only going to be limited to 12 months. Some of them don't even want to go there because they figure, or not even that, but sometimes if they see that you're an Indian national or a Chinese national, that's going to take a long time, because they're thinking, okay, well, yeah, I have you for 3 years, but what if you don't get picked in the lottery? What happens? And even sponsoring you for a green card is not an option, because even if they agree to sponsor you, because of the backlog, you're still not going to be far enough in the process. So those are kind of things that you're fighting, having to fight with when it comes to marketing yourself, and how to sell yourself and convince that employer to give it a shot and have you come on board. That's why sometimes it's a good idea to start sourcing companies that actually have partnerships with the schools, with the colleges, because a lot of them have partnerships. So then it's kind of like their way of getting all their interns working for them, and then it's already streamlined. They get them for 3 years on the OPT, and then they keep trying for H-1B. And those are the companies that usually work, because they already have a system in place, they're more likely to have you on board, But that said, you also sometimes have more of a chance to negotiate when you're dealing with a smaller employer, because when it's a bigger employer, there's all this bureaucracy in place and step-by-step things, So there's pros and cons as far as, so that's why I think when you're searching, don't necessarily discount a smaller employer, but by going just for the bigger employers, but also don't just go for the bigger employers. There's also going to be some merit to trying to apply with some of these smaller companies,
Yeah, that's
So-
awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you. All right, Chris.
Yes. So Dr. Beckler, the last question is a continuation of our previous conversation on organization changes when it comes to hiring international students. So did you have any other thoughts on industry changes or things that you've seen or like to share?
Let me think about that. Let's see. Industry changes. Well, the biggest deal right now is it's hard to hire, hard to find people. One of our former grads, Britt, I think she went back to Britt Olson or Britt Herman, but she's the general manager of On. It's a running company. And she just got promoted to that role. So now she's the GM for America for that. And it's a Swiss-based company, so they have a little international flavor. She just posted something like, we're looking for 25 people, like 25. So these are like, it's not a DTNA, which is already big, and they know the process. Like DTNA knows the drill. Intel knows the drill. These major companies around, they know the drill of how to do this, and they know the risks, and if they have 10, they're hoping they end up with 5 or something, because they can roll the dice that way. These smaller ones, though, now they're really struggling to find people. And I like Gretel's idea of not discounting these smaller firms. I mean, a really tiny firm might be difficult because they're afraid. They don't know how it works, and there's fear in there, and paperwork and all that kind of stuff. But these middling companies, there's a lot of them in Portland, and they really are looking for people. So if you know what you're doing, it's what Aditi was saying, is she did her homework, and when they ask questions, you have an answer to help, and you kind of know how it goes, and you're honest about what the risks are. Those are folks that might be willing to, they could do really well by hiring you. They know that, they're just afraid because there's just fear, the fear of not having done it before, and those kinds of things. I don't know if that helps, because no matter what, there's all this paperwork and so forth, but somehow it's a different environment now. I think it gives you more opportunity for people to say, I will do something that before I might have called and said, no, I don't even apply if you don't have a US work permit.
Yeah, I mean, just to add to what Mark was saying real quick, I mean, one change that I've seen lately in my practice is that there's more and more of these middle to smaller employers that are calling and saying, okay, I have a prospective employee, and what is this H-1B? What can I do? Are there even options outside of the H-1B? So there's definitely a change that's happening right now. And I think it's you guys can definitely capitalize on that and see, you know, like On, for example, I love their shoes.
Oh, you do? Okay, you know the company.
Yes.
She's an
I'm a
MBA.
big fan. I'm a big fan.
Thank you both for that insight. All right, Trevor, you're up.
All right, Edie, last question. How did your employer navigate the process with you?
Again, I did my back work. So I remember when I joined, my first manager, he was not aware of the process. So, you know, I walked him through the process. I had 12 or 24 months with OPT. So I told him, okay, if my visa doesn't get picked first time, we have one more or two more opportunities, depends on the timing. And second, I did my homework. So I always had that plan B. If things doesn't work here in US, where would I go next? And also I was talking to my manager as well, like DTNA, it's a German company. So if it doesn't work here, maybe I can move to Europe and then come back here. So yeah, having plan B and working with manager really helps, you know, just be very open and honest, you know, and come up with a plan, like rather than giving them, because they don't know anything about the visa process. So you have to come up with your own ideas. Okay, if this doesn't happen, I would like to do this, would be my next step. What do you think about it? So that helps.
I love that.
Can I add to what she said too?
Yeah, go for it. Please, anybody jump in.
I just want to say that one thing that you guys can also do is if you say you as part of your due diligence, you consulted, say, with an immigration attorney or something, feel free to ask that immigration attorney to see if, and say, okay, I've consulted with you. If I'm interviewing for the process and the employer has some follow-up questions, can I bring you on board, or can I offer to have the employer consult with you, even if it's at your own expense, you know, just because you want to show that employer that not only are you on the ball and you're on top of things, because if they see that you're on top of that, they know that you're going to be on top of the work that you're going to be doing for them. I mean, that's like the best example that you could show of how you do your due diligence and how resourceful you are, you know. And from our end, I mean, speaking as an immigration attorney, I mean, I'm more than happy to talk and answer some questions by that employer, especially with emails. And usually with us, the employers ask, I mean, frankly, the same questions over and over again. So for us, it doesn't take really that much time to respond to that question. And at the end of the day, it's potential work for us and potential or even marketing work for us. So when you guys are doing this stuff, and if you're doing your meeting with immigration attorneys, don't be afraid to ask those questions from whoever it may be that you're getting help from, you know.
Yeah, I have one more kind of an upside down perspective on what happens after your visa expires. And I think it's important to know what's next. Like, the expectation that you're just going to be able to stay doesn't always happen. I've literally gotten kicked out of 3 countries. My work permit expired at first Switzerland. When that was up, they were strict. There was no way I was staying. And still, it was an amazing experience. So I wouldn't give it back just because I couldn't stay. I was out, right? There was no way to stay. Then Aruba, I got booted out. They said the work permit's up. You were supposed to have trained somebody else by now. And I'm like, but it's so nice here. You know, what are you going to say? And you're out. And still, that's a great experience. So even though sometimes, and so having plan B and not getting down, if it's not going to work out 100%, still, if you can get that first visa, and even for a few years, work in a country, you know, what's nice is maybe you pick up in like Adi was saying, go to Germany. There are other countries where you can get another experience. and try that. So, you know, I've been through wanting to stay and not being allowed. And it's not the end of the world. It's actually, I still look back on those experiences so fondly.
Yeah. Well, and
I
also,
100% agree with you, Professor. Yeah, that's true.
well, and also, if your company has overseas sites, one of the visa categories could be you get sent over there, you work for a year at least, and then you could come back, say, on an L1, which is an intra-company transferee type of visa. So that's, there's all these other visa options that might pop up if after you've already been outside, or even working for the same employer but at their overseas site. So yeah.
For sure, for sure. Thank you guys so much for that insight. It was really nice to hear all the piggybacking. Chris, do you have another question for Dr. Meckler? No?
No, that was the last one. Yeah.
Okay, then I have a couple questions for you all. We had like the structured questions that we wanted to ask you, and then I'm just like, sort of from what I'm hearing, I've got questions. So this one's for Gretel specifically. I know you were talking about different types of visas outside of H-1B. Would you mind talking us, like, just giving like a quick example or like a quick explanation for a couple of different ones along with the H-1B? So like, I know you mentioned O1, L1.
Yeah. So, I mean, the L1 is, like I said, it's an intra-company type of visa. So the requirement for that is you have to have been working overseas for at least 1 year out of the last 3 years before that overseas entity could bring you back in. So sometimes we've had clients where they were on OPT and then they haven't gotten picked in the H-1B lottery. So then the company, which has an overseas site, might send them over to Germany, have them work in Germany for at least 1 year, and then, or their entity in India or in the Philippines, wherever they may be. I mean, sometimes the employees more than happy to be working outside of the US, and then they get there and then you bring them back on board. Or sometimes thinking outside the box, you go look at the family members of that, the spouse, for example, of that foreign national employee, because then they might be married to somebody that's in H-1B status, so then you could switch them to H-4. And if the spouse is already far enough in the green card process, sometimes the H-4 dependent might be able to get a work permit, So there's those, and then there's the O1, which is an extraordinary ability type of visa. I mean, it's harder to get unless maybe you're already, maybe you just got your PhD, and before that you already have this body of work that you could claim, and so you could try to say that you're qualify already for full one extraordinary ability. I mean, and then there's also the option of trying to see if you could find an H-1B exempt employer, So if you end up working for UP, for example, UP as an institution of higher education is exempt from the H-1B visa numbers. Or if you wanted to teach at a community college, for example, then because it's an institution of higher education, it's exempt. You don't have to do the H-1B lottery when it's one of these exempt entities. So that's an option to try and see, or you might not make as much money, but if it's a nonprofit that's affiliated with an institution of higher education, you could also try that, and you would be exempt from the H-1B lottery. So there's really a lot of I mean, there might be more options than you think there are. So before giving up, you kind of want to do your homework already and try to have this plan A, plan B, and even a plan C, and see what pans out. Otherwise, like Mark said, I mean, it's not a bad idea to it's still not a wasted effort to have been here and gotten the experience and working, and make, creating those relationships.
I 100% agree. Thank you for that. And I have one more question before I give you a break and move on to someone else. So I was reading through your bio, and you said that you also work with the families of these skilled workers. So what is the visa process like for them? Because I know that that could be a hang up sometimes.
Well, I mean, for the H-1B, if they're married, so their spouses would get the H-4 dependent status, and any children under 21 also get the H-4 dependent status. When they start getting sponsored permanently for green card status, so long as there's a legal relationship, like they're legally married or they get married before the green card is approved, then that dependent spouse derivative spouse rise along with the sponsorship process. So again, there's a lot of in any children under 21. I mean, there's a lot of strategizing also that's involved, as far as, okay, if one person is working for another company and the other person is working for another company, you kind of, and both entities are willing to sponsor you, so you kind of, why not? It's whichever one comes first, or sometimes part of the process here is, if part of the due diligence that we do as immigration attorneys is really look at the entire family structure and say, what's the long-term plan for these kids? Are they interested in staying with you, or are they here also on student visas? Because at some point, if that kid ages out and turns 21, sometimes you have no choice, and we've had to switch them to F1 status just so they could stay in the US and stay with the parents, who are still waiting in line, on their whatever 15th year H-1B already. So, but there's all this, you really, when you're doing immigration, you really can't just look at that person, because it's a unit, and this comes up when we're dealing with employers too, because with employers, they're like, okay, well, we're only willing to pay for the cost associated with the employee, but they don't realize that, that employee, it's more headache and more cost, and it ends up being more cost for them if that employee's spouse and children get stuck outside the US. So really, it's not always just our only focus is on the employee. We don't care about the family member. When they're all foreign nationals, it's not that easy. You have to really look at them as a unit.
Thank you so much for going through that. Yeah, our family went through that a little bit, so I'm familiar. Okay, Dr. Meckler, can we pick your brain about your experience in foreign countries?
Well, it's a lot like what I have some sympathy for students that come to the US and international students, that if you take a job, I guess I want to say it this way. What's really hard for an international student, just getting through the visa process is stressful enough. Starting a new job is really stressful. I think it's on the list of like one of the most stressful things. I think moving and starting a new job are like near like the top 3 in stressful things, and then you end up doing 2 at the same time. And on top of wondering whether or not I'm even going to be allowed to stay, is it worth it? So it's really hard to perform on the job.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I learned is getting somewhere else. It takes a while. You got, I just don't know. I don't know how the 2 years is enough, because it really does take that first 5-6 months. Imagine like any of you who are international students, you get to the States and it's like, you don't even know where to go shopping.
Yeah.
You don't know anything. Like, how do you get a car? Who can I trust? How do things work around here? You don't even know when to crack a joke. So it's really hard, let alone that on top of now I got to go to work and be good at my job. And that's the hardest part, I think. I was blessed when I went to Aruba, I was blessed that it lasted. I got 4 full years, because looking back, it's not even 6 months. I feel like that first year was like I was barely contributing. It was kind of pretend contribution. because it was just so hard. And then after that, you really get going. And that's my, in terms of travel is one thing. That's fun. You go to the Philippines and I'm usually traveling. I'm not working. It's just a matter of getting past the heat and the mosquitoes, and then you're good again.
Yeah.
And it's awesome. But if you go to a job, it's a whole other level of stress. And that's the thing I think is hardest for international employees and international students, is managing that stress, the fear and the starting the new job. And so the advice I would give for you, at least like at University of Portland, is try, now you've lived around Portland for a certain amount of time, try to get that job around Portland. So at least you don't have to get up and move, because that's a double whammy. There, try to do it here, because it's going to be stressful enough starting a new job, being international, trying to hit the lottery, the whole thing, without going to another city and figuring it out. As much rain as we have here, you might just stay for this.
No, I totally agree. Thank you so much for sharing that. Do you have any other tips and tricks for like how to manage all of
there's
this?
lots. I have lots of tips and tricks, but none of them are lawful. And so Gretel's here. I can't say them.
Well, thank you anyway. All right, Aditi, my last question is for you. How has your time been at Daimler, and how has your time been here in the US in general?
So both have been awesome, honestly, to be very frank. So I was lucky, like I got University of Portland, which is pretty close to work and office, and home as well. Not too close, but 30 minutes is not that long of a drive, I would consider. If I'm in California or Seattle, that's the normal. But it's been good. Being in US again, I like to read, so I kind of knew what I can expect when I'm in US. But obviously, when I moved first time, I didn't know where to go. Like now I know if I have to pick something, I can go to Target. And that time I was like, what is Target? Where do I go? So it does take time. And of course, minimum a year. Even now, there are some things which I don't know. Like my daughter's first birthday, I don't know where to pick party supplies. So I know Dollar Tree. And if I don't find there, I have to figure out. So anyways, but it takes time. Like where you grow up, we know all, small tricks and trades where we can go, where we can find stuff which is not available anywhere. And so with University of Portland, when I joined, I think Melissa and Lilia, they both really helped me. Professors were amazing. So I was very open and honest with them. All of them were very helpful, and, they helped me to be successful. And then at DTNA, it's been very amazing, journey, I would say. I started as an intern, but again, being an international student, I have to prove myself among other subordinates and interns that why they would hire me. Why would they, go through the H-1B application? Because it does take, budget, and they have to pay extra for visa sponsorship. And being Indian, again, Gretel had a very logical question, like if you are Indian or Chinese, they know like green card is like, I don't know, 2 decades, 3 decades. Sorry about that. Getting picked up in the lottery is really difficult. So, but they were all supportive again, because I had my all plans laid out. I told them in advance what we can do if I don't find, so that they don't feel threatened, like I'm gonna leave and they will not have any backup. And whatever work I was doing, I was following those. So, laying down the processes, and if who can be my backfill, how will they pick up that stuff? So, so that's what I did. So it's been amazing. And they have filed for my green card now. So I think, all tricks and treats worked for me.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing your
Of
story.
course.
Savai, I was gonna say, with the remote work ability now that we've all learned as a result of the pandemic, that opens a whole new, even for us, for immigration, a whole new situation, so, and opportunities.
Yeah. So I guess like how are you guys like sort of like navigating that now that everything is opening back up and people are expecting in person more? So anyone that like worked remote now has to be on site. How are you guys navigating that?
I mean, for me, I mean, a lot of questions now as far as the employers that we service is, you know, some of their employees, unbeknownst to them, have moved out of state. So as far as the H-1B goes, do we need to file an amended H-1B? How about the LCA? What's the prevailing wage at that new location? So there's all these other immigration related issues that came up aside from the regular HR, tax, payroll tax issues that's outside of the immigration environment. So, but it also opens up more opportunities in the sense that, you know, sometimes if they move to a different location, I mean, really, it proves that they can really do the work remotely. They don't need to be on site. So, and if the employee is really valuable, then they would, you know, or sometimes they move to a location that's a lot cheaper, prevailing wage wise, than say in Oregon, you know. So it I mean, yeah, it's just a whole new world out there.
No, I totally get it. I totally get it. All right. I think that's the end of questions in general. So now our team will take questions or comments if you guys have them. If not, then I would like to say thank you all so much. All of you panelists have been amazing. Thank you all for sharing your knowledge and your stories with us. It has been really helpful to us, I think, as well, even though I speak for myself and I think most of my team when I say that we're not all international students, but I think hearing your guys' perspective has really helped shape our understanding of what the visa process is like, but also just what the business world is like. So we really appreciate all of your guys' insight. For anyone listening at home, our team is very happy to receive any questions and try to answer them to the best of our abilities. Our speakers have also graciously allowed us to display their contact information, which is going up right now. So we have our UP team, which includes Melissa, Lilia, and Rebecca. We have the speakers' email addresses here as well. Gretel, Dr. Meckler, and Aditi's emails are up there, and our team's emails are up here too. So we're happy to receive any questions and direct you as we so can. So thank you all for joining us tonight, and we really do appreciate all of the time that you've taken to help us out with this.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for putting it together. Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.